name's Gerald. I am a library research associate with the High Point Public Library. I'm reading today as part of the First Chapter Friday program. The book I'm going to read this morning is called Flashback 4, The Titanic Mission. It's written by Gutman, and it's part of a series. You don't have to read them in order. The reason why I chose it is because it has adventure and historical fiction. When I was teaching my son to read, he really gravitated to something like this, and it just means a lot to me when I come across books like this. Okay, I'm going to start with the introduction. It was 20 minutes before midnight when steel touched ice. The date, April 14th, 1912. The place, the North Atlantic Ocean, about 370 miles southeast of Newfoundland. That's Canada. It was cold outside, so cold, as cold as ice. The ocean was flat and calm that night, almost like a sheet of glass. The largest ship in the world at the time, the Titanic, had nearly completed its maiden voyage. It sliced through the water at top speed, close to 24 miles per hour. The sky was clear, cloudless, and almost moonless, except for a tiny sliver. But the stars were bright and sometimes shooting. So peaceful, it must have been tempting to take one's eye off the distant horizon and gaze up at the star above. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe the lookout glanced up and saw a shooting star. He couldn't take his eyes off it, and then, when he returned his gaze to the horizon moments later, he saw it directly in front of him, an enormous mountain of ice. In Greek mythology, the Titans were a race of giant gods with incredible strength who ruled the Golden Age. That's how the Titanic got its name. It would seem like no contest, frozen water versus hard steel. But it was the steel that was not the ice. The iceberg towered 60 feet high, and that was just a part of it that was above the waterline. It was 8 times larger below the surface, and 4 times the size of the Titanic, steaming directly toward it. 1 million tons of ice. Everything happened so fast after that. The lookout turned around and frantically rang the emergency bell 3 times. "Hard starboard!" Somebody on the bridge shouted almost immediately, but it was far too late. It was not easy to turn around a vessel that's 900 feet long and weighs over 46,000 tons. It takes time, and that was one thing in short supply. Titanic was only a quarter-mile away from the iceberg and closing fast. It's easy to say now, but it probably would have been better if the Titanic hadn't turned at all. It should have just ran the iceberg head-on. The front of the ship was designed to take a hit. It might have survived the damage. The sides of the ship were much more fragile. Just 37 seconds after the emergency bell rang, steel touched ice on the front side of the Titanic, the starboard side. The impact was 10 feet above the keel, but well below the waterline. There was no crash, no jolt. It appeared to be a glancing blow, a little bump, harmless. Titanic didn't even stop moving forward. The iceberg didn't break apart. It was like 2 ships passing in the night. But the hull of the Titanic, like any large ship, was made of hundreds of overlapping steel plates, each of them just 1.5 inches thick. These plates were held in place by iron rivets. The rivets were small, just 1 inch thick and 3 inches long. When ice touched steel, something had to give. It was the rivets. Iron isn't as strong as steel. One at a time, the rivets popped off. Chop, chop, chop. The heads of the rivets had sliced off like mushrooms. The hole didn't open up like a zipper or a can opener, the way it had sometimes been described. Without rivets to hold them in place, the steel plates that lined the ship were roughly shoved aside, like a toddler ripping the wrapping paper off a birthday present. Water gushed in the gash, 400 tons of it a minute. The 16 watertight compartments that lined the hull began to fill. Only some of the passengers on board heard the rumbling, grinding noise below deck. Most of them were asleep and didn't notice a thing. And then, just like that, it was over. The iceberg floated on by as if nothing unusual had happened. It was chipped in a few places, but none the worse for wear. In less than 10 seconds, the damage had been done to Titanic. That's all it took. The unsinkable ship was fatally injured, and the unthinkable was about to happen. Okay, that was the introduction. Again, I chose this book because of it's based on facts. It's also got some adventure, and again, it reminds me of my time with my son when we read together. Thanks for joining me. I hope you join us again for another story with First Chapter Friday, and we'll see you at the High Point Public Library.